Good afternoon. And welcome and thank you for being with us at the 12th Annual Green Festival DC. We'd like to thank, we have over 700 volunteers, our DC host committee, and of course, our exhibitors and our sponsors, because we would be nowhere without these people. And I am introducing Miss Ariana Marshall. And she is going to do a segment on global sustainability, local resilience, and the value of Caribbean partnership beyond enjoying the beach. So, here she is.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming, and whoever is hearing my voice. Bringing you greetings from Barbados, the Caribbean Sustainability Collective. So, really quickly, who are we and why are we here? We're driven by the question of how we could develop a cooperative between consultants, businesses, and organizations with a vested interest in the region, the Caribbean region, rather than outsourcing our knowledge management, outsourcing our ideas. We want to be concerned about what's happening in the Caribbean, which is tied to what is happening in the States, of course, and I'm going to share why, throughout the presentation. So I sought out directors for the collective who are similarly driven, and you can see them there. We have Dr. Maya Trotz with USF, Jason Green, an architectural designer with Chattel House inspired, Jerome Wood, whose video I'm going to show towards the end, and Micah Gittins, he's in biotech, and then myself, I'm a professor with APUS, environmental science, and also I have an eco club that I work with children on environmental issues. So we launched the Better Caribbean program this year. The collective was formed in 2014 as a result of a group of us really feeling like we were hamsters on treadmills, doing different projects which were all connected. I wanted to find a way to connect these projects and basically maximize our time and our resources. So a really quick example is we met through the Green Business Barbados program. And in that program, I was also a part of another project to create the first organic standard within Barbados, organic farming. And to me, the connection between Green Business and Barbados and Organic Growers Association was it was quite obvious, but there wasn't really a way for these projects to work together. And we found a way by having the OGCA be certified by Green Business Barbados. That's just a simple example of how we're trying to bring things together. So it's about a collective consciousness, collective action in a self-determined way. So we don't necessarily work by saying, let's have a meeting and let's come up with an agenda of how we work together. Each of us has different consultancies and works with different programs. But this is before we launched the program Better Caribbean, which is what we're exhibiting here at Green Festival. We find we have similar ideas and intentions, and ultimately is to make sustainability culturally relevant for the region, and we understand that people are interested in Caribbean culture as well, so it's not specific. We're not creating something just for people who are interested in the Caribbean, but we want to do it in a Caribbean way. And as I said, we were brought together, we met, the directors of the collective met through the Green Business Barbados program, which is funded by the Inter-American Development Bank, and it was housed in another nonprofit organization. So the collective is a nonprofit organization. But we do want to evolve to become a cooperative because we understand that from our various experiences that charity and nonprofit organizations, the typical model of being dependent on volunteers and voluntary achievement, it often fails because with real life, your jobs will take priority. So we say let's invest invest our finances, let's invest our time into something that could be, it wouldn't fall to the wayside if we had to pick between our job and this. This is basically our job. And we want to find ways to make connections. And we find that when you take financial responsibility, you tie it to a cause, you're going to get more mileage. You're going to actually understand how to make your responsibilities tied to your causes. And I don't really want to go too much into this, but I do face challenges sometimes with people understanding this model, especially in the Caribbean. There's one idea of a nonprofit, our charity, and that's basically everybody works for free, you do it on your own time. We're trying to create a different model, and I find people's ability to understand that is based on your degree of privilege. So if you've ever lived paycheck to paycheck, when someone doesn't pay you, you can't put food on the table, and then you decide to do some kind of volunteer work, it can put a bad taste in your mouth if then you're not able to support yourself financially, but then you're devoting it to a cause. So we have had that experience personally among the collective, and we don't want to encourage that for anybody that's working with the collective. We want it to be tied to the livelihood. The work of sustainability has to be tied to your livelihood. So this is what is driving the development of this nonprofit shifting to becoming a cooperative. And we're doing this one relationship at a time through the Better Caribbean program. So as I said, we met through the Green Business Barbados program. There are 21 businesses and the only green certified businesses in the whole of the Caribbean. And what we saw, because of that, there were opportunities for them to then begin to work together. And because they were the first in the Caribbean, well, certainly to work throughout the region. So a quick example, there's an organic farmer. We started a buying club with him, and another organic farmer, and I have the organic products, like she makes hot sauce and mustards and so on. So for the buying club, you get a bonus every month, and so that's basically a basic way for them to work together. The coconut chips I have over in booth 274, that's also a bonus for the buying club members. And one of the first people or businesses to support the buying club was one of the other certified green businesses. So we're trying to keep it simple, cooperative-wise, but it is actually happening, and we're really excited about that, building this model. Another example with like Body Holistic Clinic, she's also one of the co-exhibitors in our booth. She wants to have basically a mini one of these, but in a very low organizing way. So just have speakers one at a time, somewhat like this, but have it be regular so we don't have to put too much energy into telling people it's gonna happen every Thursday, But it's a way to give other businesses a time point of what they need to work towards. So we have a business that makes, well, she just joined the program, Green Banana Pasta. She makes 5 pastas at a time. So having an event, like she's really just a startup. So having an event like a natural expo, she has something to work towards, and then her consumers won't feel disappointed. They will understand her load. And what we want to do is also help businesses tell their story so they don't overcommit and burn out, which happens quite often. So because we're from Barbados in the Caribbean, we admit that, hello, we want to admit that it is beautiful. We're not saying, don't worry about our beautiful sceneries, we really are struggling, there's really texture. It is beautiful, and that's what inspires us. But there is always more than what meets the eye. What I find with my US colleagues and collaborators, there's often a glossing over of our business culture, an assumption that you could come and do business in the Caribbean the same way you would do it in the US. Then to a degree they start to understand it, but then kind of trust in the local knowledge. It's like a part of growing our relationship. We kind of butt heads on that, what that growth looks like. And there's a false sense of, oh yeah, I understand, Caribbean people generally get to events late. You generally have low resources, or generally you're struggling, there's lots of generalizations. And what we want to do is really show the reality. But I want to say that this presentation is really for anybody who's interested in US consumer trends. And I think that being at the Green Festival, you would be somewhat concerned about how your consumption affects us in the Caribbean. We want to build resiliency. So our overall intention is to share the beauty of the region, but we want to help people understand our reality so we can form better relationships, both with people who are potential visitors or businesses that may want to partner. So here's one of those series as an intermission. St. James, Barbados. So the title of this talk is The Value of the Caribbean Partnership. So let me answer this before I go too far into our texture of what our reality is. So what we think could be a valuable Caribbean partnership for whoever is listening would be if you are interested in linking your business to our businesses here, that you do a trip to Barbados or to the Caribbean, but we're based in Barbados. But do a trip that isn't necessarily an agenda trip. Like, I need to meet this person, I need to see these suppliers. Because that's kind of like the first challenge we have, because you haven't even begun to understand our culture and you're already trying to shape it with your business culture. So I just encourage, and this is for all islands. It is a good idea to just go and experience it and then get to the level of, wanting to make a partnership. I also see Caribbean partnerships, and particularly with our nonprofit organization, as a simple way to offset carbon emissions. I know they're very complicated credit systems, and people would say plant a tree here and so on, but we are trying to build a model that helps to diversify the corporate social responsibility of some larger businesses in the US that may see the Caribbean market as something that they're interested in, but they're doing it in a corporate, responsible way, socially responsible way. And the motivation should be, honestly, the US waste does end up in the Caribbean. It ends up in two ways. We have currents. Barbados is the most easterly island of the Caribbean, so we do get a lot of drifted garbage on our east coast, and this is actually our east coast. And it blew my mind that I was seeing Coca-Cola bottles that hadn't been made in like 10 years. I saw them like lodged into the rocks of our east coast. You have the caps of plastic bottles. You have shoes that people don't even need the style of shoe. And it shows you how persistent garbage really is. We typically hear about the soup of plastic in the Pacific, and people, there's lots of coverage for that, but every island is dealing with this. So that's one way. And to take responsibility, other ways are consumption habits. We are importing a lot of goods from the US, from the UK, and from Canada, and so it ends up on our small little island. Barbados, by the way, is 14 miles. It's 14 miles by 21. We're very small, 166 square miles. So there's not much places for our waste to go. We also see it as a direct way to tackle climate change adaptation. So in the States, primarily, you're looking at reducing your emissions. You are seeing some impacts of climate change, but definitely in the Caribbean, we're seeing them a lot more quickly with El Nino years. And then when you look at also the fact that waste is blocking our transportation areas, we are flooding more often. And then climate change adaptation, the face of it are our coastlines. So we already have multi-million-dollar projects for our boardwalk to deal with the sea level rise. So it's happening. So a Caribbean partnership could be, some business that sees the geoengineering that has to happen for adjusting to sea level rise, investing directly into a coastal business in Barbados. I know two businesses. There's one restaurant. They have to move their shares whenever there's a high tide. They're like right on the beach. They move their, and they just accept that this is the way it is. They put down sandbags every time, and I'm thinking they're not able to do this for much longer. But we do have a kind of, a grit where we'll just keep doing it until we can't do it anymore. So a possible partnership would be someone that has the geotech that could help reinforce some of our coastlines. Because right now, all of that kind of work is done with multilateral agencies under loans and grants from our government, which then puts our island into some other financial issues. So possible direct business-to-business solutions, we could look at. So we want to build these relationships also. We're offering as a collective, as a nonprofit, as a way to catalyze those types of relationships. So this is the boardwalk that I was talking about that was built specifically to deal with climate change, to deal with sea level rise. It's on a very popular part of Barbados, from Hastings to Accra Beach. And you can see the coconut trees there hanging on for bare life. And there are some coconut trees that have lost their lives as well. But it's one thing that actually motivated me to move back to Barbados, because I lived in Florida and I was hearing about sea level rise. I knew that the islands would be facing issues, but then seeing first the amount of money that's going into boardwalks, and then actually seeing these changes, we don't have much time. We need to catalyze these relationships and solve these issues. But we can't solve the whole grand issue of climate change, clearly, but especially in the region, we have to go into adaptation mode. So how we're doing this is the Better Caribbean program with science, service, and solutions at our center. So basically, we try to provide organizational learning within businesses, between businesses. We do customer engagement in a scientifically validated way, and we help them basically build their resilience to all of these issues. I'm not going to go through all of them, but as I said, changing coastlines, the idea of an economic recession, water shortages. There's this other concept that came out, a black swan storm, because we've already had more 100-year hurricanes than were estimated, so now they have to come up with another scary manifestation of climate change. Asthma, we face issues with obesity. So we try to tie, all of these issues are all related to our sustainability of our health and our environment. So this is just our way of looking at things. When we do things through our center at science, it's our way to keep generating new ideas. The whole idea of science is that you experiment to see what works and then you create some new solution. So that's how we kind of integrate science into what we're doing, and most of our backgrounds are in science, but we see the value of social science. Generate new ideas, lead to solutions, and solutions then will give businesses what they ultimately need, and that is satisfied customers and more of those. We want to shift the whole ecosystem so that more responsible businesses they kind of become the dominant businesses, and it's really an exception if you're a business that doesn't care about your environmental ethic. It's a grand goal, but that's the shift that we're trying to encourage. And all of that is tied to the service which then these customers get, and then we use the science to see how that then can inform another business relationship. So we called it a Better Caribbean program so that no green or sustainable or whatever trending word could basically thwart what we're doing. And also, if someone doesn't per se agree with what they're doing being green, we can at least say, well, do you want better products? Do you want better customer engagement? Do you want better technology? So we basically co-design. We don't tell businesses what to do. We listen, and then we try to find out really what they want to do, and then we kind of bring in our perspective of what could be sustainable and then how they could build resilience. So we try to simplify sustainability in short. And as I said, all of that is tied to climate change. And how we get businesses to come in is either they could join our program, or we could give them a free product review or business review, so they get a sample of what it would be like working with us. But really, to catalyze all of this, we are going to do educational campaigns. So this is part of a campaign, a lifestyles campaign, and in June, we're going to focus in on the health aspect of sustainability, like how our environmental choices actually impact our health and vice versa. And then we're going to run an energy campaign and a waste management campaign. And we're hoping these are ways to recruit businesses to join the program, because ultimately, we will be engaging their future customers with education. So then they'll be a part of the ecosystem, and we can find other ways to work with them. And hopefully I can come back next year to DC and share how that is actually working. I have a few examples, but hopefully we would have made some gains in that. And as I said, we look at better customer reach, better technology, better products, and customer retention. And with the science perspective, we just don't want to say better. That's the qualitative way of doing it, but we pick numbers. So some of the businesses that are with our exhibit, I said, well, our goal is to engage 50 people, and that's what we're going to work towards. 50 people online, 50 people here. So we pick numbers. For some businesses, they're ready to say, I'm ready to save $2,000 on my LED lights, okay? So we pick numbers so that could guide our ways of working together. So there's the program, and then I guess the vehicle for the program would be our Better Caribbean platform. So we have a website, bettercaribbean.com, and then within it we have the blog, where we try to do things that are culturally relevant. And what I mean by this is we try to give examples of the very businesses that joined the program as what we're talking about. So if we're going to define organic, then I'm going to talk about the organic farmer that's in our program. It's quite simple, but it's just surprising that consumer education hasn't really been done in this way. Typically in the Caribbean, businesses take on their own education of their consumers, but the issue with that is that, of course, you're going to tell me that what you're doing is great and green and organic and all of that, but you need a third party to kind of say that you're doing that as well, and that's what we're trying to offer. The blog, how we make that culturally relevant, is basically any issue that rises up in the public, we're going to connect that to climate change or waste management or whatever, And then social media. The typical in the Caribbean, WhatsApp is really the way that most business happens, most information goes out, broadcasts, and Facebook. In the Caribbean, Instagram is popular, but not as popular as Facebook. For all generations, Instagram has a certain target audience in the Caribbean. And then Snapchat is on the rise, and Periscope is far behind. But I see the value of Periscope because you don't really have to package what you're doing, and it could break the barriers that small businesses may have if they say, well, I can't make a video, I can't not WhatsApp it, it's basically you pull up a video, you broadcast what you're doing, and you call it a day. And radio is really big in the Caribbean as well, so we're using that for our engagement. And then real FaceTime. In-person FaceTime events. We had a community day in November, and we are trying to go into the stream where people are already, instead of saying, let's have a Better Caribbean event, or let's have a Better Caribbean festival. We're trying to go where people are already to then make our impact. And as I said, we're mobilizing through campaigns. So back to thinking global and acting local, also known as local. Just would like to challenge everybody there here to rethink how that actually looks. And it shifted out of the idea of, I guess against the idea of globalization where everything should be the same. I think everybody understands now that everything can't be the same in every country. However, then it evolved to the idea of like franchises and global companies where they pick the goals, and then at a regional level they kind of tinker with it and then see how it happens. But there's tension because imagine someone telling you what to do in your own home, and that's the challenge. And now there's this 3-box model of dealing with thinking global and acting local, where you actually ask what the global ambition is, but then there's like a 50-50 relationship so that there's freedom both on the regional and global side. And then you make it personal and bring it to life. But how we have to challenge things in the region is that there are businesses that may not have a global ambition. Honestly, there are businesses that I brought to this exhibit that are not interested in exporting, they're not interested in that hassle. They're completely satisfied with either getting more people to come to Barbados, but technically not more people, because then that could be unsustainable as well. We are only so big, but actually getting people when they come to Barbados to recognize that they're more sustainable or healthy businesses. So we have to ask people really what their model is and not just assume the model is exporting. So we want to figure out what this looks like. And we would ask our businesses, like, to what degree should your worldwide trends really influence what you're doing? Now, if you're in the solar industry, obviously global trends are going to affect what you're doing in the region, because of the cost of the technology. But maybe if you're in a raw food market, you can look at things a little differently. We ask them what they really want. Because as I said, there's some businesses that don't want to export. They like the quality of what they're doing. They like the intimacy. They like to know everybody that they work with in person. And so that could be satisfying. It can also be financially fulfilling if you're making, if your quality of life is something that's fulfilling, then necessarily you don't need to open up that big business model to your business. So yeah, essentially that's the core of, if you have an internal environmental ethic, really how will you develop your business relationships? And thinking big and going big is not always the solution. But for some businesses, they do. I mean, there are some businesses that are interested in exporting and they want to expand. But we also want to keep everybody grounded in sustainability. So the question, is it really happening? By now, I think it's been at least 20 years that people are talking about acting local. But there's still so many global pressures and global models of doing business. So we want to look at what really is relevant to our region. And some of the challenges we have are that our consumers are still influenced by global trends. So then even if a business doesn't want to be concerned about a global trend, the fact that their consumer is, say, coconut chips, say a consumer is comparing the coconut chips that are imported in Barbados compared to hers, she has to take that into account. She has to kind of compete with them until she and we can make that case that her coconut chips are always going to be better than something imported, But they kind of do have to listen to the global trends for a little bit, but shape is another question. The other conflict we have with acting local is how dependent our islands are on tourism. And I recommend that everyone watch this film. I'm not sure if it's available online, but you can buy it online. It's Jamaica for Sale, and it shows you the realities of what is really happening in terms of tourism and labor in the Caribbean. It's focused on Jamaica, but the reality is very similar in our islands. Because tourism is heavily subsidized, and it's deeply connected to our lives. Personally, I'm all about sustainability, but tourism has kept food on my table all of my life. Both my mother and my sister are in the tourism industry in tennis, and they're chefs. So I can't say, tourism is terrible, and then tourism has, I guess, led to some of my dearest friends coming to Barbados. So, it's a model of what really is sustainable. So, but it is a challenge when we want to act local. So I don't want to preach to the choir, and if any of you are open to answering what your concept of global sustainability is, I think we need to reevaluate it. Because the idea of sustainability is that you're sustaining resources. But what if what you're doing actually needs to stop? You don't need to sustain the same practices, or something like oil. Do we really need oil to be sustainable? Maybe once we don't have any more oil or fossil fuel, any fossil fuels, that type of unsustainable practice shouldn't be sustained anymore, because then it causes other impacts. So we're considering that the idea of sustainability, you really need to assess what is necessary and what's not. So we see as you go through a cleanse before you decide to sustain anything. In Barbados, we have to cease some of our waste management practices. I did encounter some businesses that were very sustainably and environmentally minded, but they still burn their garbage, because we had some issues with how often some of our waste is picked up. This is a resource issue with our Ministry of Environment. It's not an intention issue. But people don't like garbage around their house, so they'll choose to burn something before they let it sit there and have rats attract to it. So I have encountered businesses where I'm saying, you know what, you all need to stop burning stuff. You're all sustainable, but that right there, it needs to change. We also have two large-scale waste management projects coming online in Barbados. One is biomass and plasma gasification. And is anyone familiar with biomass and gasification? It's high-tech incineration. Very high-tech incineration. Very expensive high-tech incineration. And it's been very contentious in Barbados. So we really want to look for technology that's more suited for our island, that doesn't put us at risk, air pollution-wise and financially, because with this plan, it's estimated that let me not say the number, but the fact that the government is subsidizing it, it means it's moving some funds away from other things that we need. So that's a fundamental issue. And then you have climate change, which is another reason why we shouldn't be trying to adopt technology that's actually going to also be generating more carbon to start with. So what we're trying to encourage, that idea of resiliency, is that there's going to be all of these stresses, but we need to discern what are the practices we need to cleanse and the ones we need to continue. And then we adapt and start the cycle again. So essentially resilience is adapting through stress. Which practices do we eliminate and which ones do we continue? So how do we act local? So we ask, no problem. On our website, we try to focus it in on the key question: what types of technology and products do we need for a better Caribbean? And we try to do this, as I said, in a culturally relevant way. And we focus in on 4, tenets of being better through the portal, in terms of a product being sustainable, healthy, non-hazardous, or resilient. And here's just one of the examples of our definitions. So we look at organic, try to break it down in a very basic way, and then we add a little bit of history that typically the Caribbean was organic to start with. I mean, people were using sheep manure and cow manure and chicken manure before, because we were not creating nitrogen fertilizers and pesticides. We didn't have the technology to do that. So we essentially were organic, and then certain changes were made. So, and then I have a link up to the farmer, the Eden Organic Farm, which we work with. So again, showing people we're not just talking about organic by Googling and saying here's what organic should be in Barbados. Like it's really happening in Barbados, and it really has happened in Barbados and the region previously. Another example of being vegan, and there is, in terms of education, there are people, like over the last few years, I've encountered that still don't understand that vegan means removing animal products, so they may still consider dairy and milk and so on. Because we do, well, traditionally in the Caribbean, the Rastafarian lifestyle, or is somewhat, they call it religion, but I would say it's a lifestyle. They have society, and they aren't always vegan, so people kind of mesh all of these ideas together. And I wouldn't call them labels, they're just the ways we talk about ourselves. So we try to give an example of, this is another business, she's exhibiting with us. She's a holistic clinic, and she also does juice bar type cleanses, and also she's a raw food chef. So again, I can talk all I want about being vegan, but people could just walk into her store and see what it looks like, And that's kind of the engagement that we want to encourage. And this is our Facebook page. We try to use a lot of images, again, to show people that this idea of healthy products and healthy living isn't dull, and it's all around us. We have many, what we might consider weeds in the Caribbean, which are being used to make high-costing gluten-free flour. Like amaranth is a key one. We know this as baji and callaloo, and it grows everywhere, and people don't hardly use it. Actually, with the buying club, we put in the amaranth, and someone called me, they're like, what is this bush you put into our thing? I'm like, it's amaranth, and then they Google it, and they're like, oh, it's gluten-free, So this is kind of the battle that we have. But what I find is once you share it with somebody, they're fine with it. Then they'll be saying, oh, well, keep the amaranth. I have some in my yard. Now I know what it is, And as I said, we have a blog. this was a blog I wrote on veganism in a different way, not that we're trying to convert people, but for your friends that may be vegan, so you don't just feed them lettuce all the time, that there are options. So there are about six vegan spots in Barbados that we wrote about. And actually, I'll bring this up here. I mentioned that one of our ways to catalyze our work is to do consumer education campaigns. So this is how I use this. The 6 businesses now, each of them are going to invest in a consumer education campaign for us to primarily be on radio to kind of educate people about how their health choices impact the environment and vice versa. This is another example of us doing culturally relevant work. There was an issue in Barbados where molasses was disposed on, well, it was illegally disposed in some areas, but the case we came into was, it was actually a farmer that was trying to compost, and the molasses does have soil structure value, but the volume was the issue. So it caused issues because it started to decompose, and it also was close to one of our natural caves. So it kind of blew up and then it blew over. So we wrote a letter to our Ministry of Environment just asking for the science on what was happening, and so far we got a verbal response, but now we want to basically play the role. We're informing people that sometimes mistakes happen, but there are ways to remediate it. Molasses also is used to remediate other clean, like heavy metals, because they actually feed the bacteria. So it's amazing. I was excited about it. It's like, well, they dumped the molasses, but we may discover something new in Barbados, So we try to see everything as an opportunity. And yeah, I'm just going through the blog right now. So how do we act local? Also, as I said, we try to engage based on what rises up in the public. And what I do is I listen to radio call-in shows. That's a very intricate part of our society. There are radio shows on every station in the morning, and then there's a mid-morning one. And that is where you really find the pulse of what's happening in the island. So anybody, I mentioned in the beginning, if you are interested in building partnerships with the Caribbean, to just come and do a trip to see what life is like. While you're there, you definitely need to read the newspaper and you need to listen to radio talk shows. So an issue was raised about, we have party cruises. That's kind of been the rising thing the last few years. And they started this trend of releasing confetti over the sea, and it blew right into the water. So someone brought it up on a radio call-in show, and then people were texting in, and people started texting me. And it was actually an easy problem to solve. We went to the party cruise owners, and they didn't even know it was happening. And they said, it's a terrible waste, and it's something that we have to clean up. I didn't have to make the case that the fish eat it, and it has dyes, and all of that. They were like, no, we're gonna ban it, and they banned it, they put it in the contract. So that's how we want to use the blog. As something comes up, we show people what some of the solutions could be. So I'm talking about acting local, so why am I here in DC? Although I'm based in Barbados. Because we have a problem. We in the Caribbean, and if anybody here is from the Caribbean or sees differently, let me know, but we do value products from the US, the UK, Canada much more as better than ones created in Barbados. Now we do have campaigns that encourage people to buy local, but when I hear from the businesses how they're kind of being challenged, like the coconut chips and the gluten-free pasta, when they actually want to charge for the cost of what they're doing, they're kind of pushed down, their price is pushed down because they're seeing other products, retailers are seeing the foreign products as being of more value. So what our covert agenda, which is not covert now, is that we want to show our Caribbean consumers that sustainable businesses can stand up in this Green Festival market, And also, hopefully for you, you can also share the value of what you're seeing. So we have a feedback survey on our Facebook page, Better Caribbean. So if you do come to our booth, this is 274, and you try anything, if it's bad, good, great, let us know, because that would be helpful. But we're far from really understanding exactly why some businesses are I guess they're struggling. It's not just the fact that consumers aren't buying their products, but sometimes I think it's back to that grandiose idea that all small businesses should end up to be large businesses. And it surprised me in Barbados that only in the last few years has our small business department started to track business deaths. So you get a lot of businesses being started and then they kind of die off and you don't know why. So what we want to do with this program is also collect data on that, but we don't want to just be a research organization. So that's why we actually work with businesses to solve some of their issues. So as I said, reasons why we're here, we want to stand up, show that our products do have value. And we have over 16 businesses here with us. Well, within the collective, but we have 13 of them being represented in our exhibit. And ultimately, as I said, we want to kind of encourage, I guess, green business tourism, ecotourism, and for it all to be grounded in our place and our experience. I am going to go forward a little bit, because I basically made the case that Green Festival is like a milestone. I also used it to get people to work together. So that we start to build this ecosystem of developing a cooperative. Find that events are catalysts. So I may say, yeah, I want these two businesses to work together, but if I say I'm going to Green Festival, they will get it together a lot more quickly. It's just the reality of it. So really quickly, I guess I've been harping on beyond the beach. Yes, we love the beach. We want to share the beauty of our places, but we want you to understand our reality. And these are two featured businesses for the Better Caribbean exhibit. Carlisa Enterprise on the left, and Chantal Salmon on the right. She's with Light Body Holistic Clinic. Carlisa on the left, she's the one that makes the green banana pasta and flour. And she started this business last year, which I think is really amazing, because it's been so popular, but she has been excellent at telling people her story. Because she said, Ariana, tell people that I'm pregnant, and that's why I'm making 5 packs, and tell people that I'm making the pasta by hand. Yes, I want to expand, but she has a very clear idea and concept of her business and how she wants to grow. And then Chantal, on the other hand, has been in business for 20 years. So she's celebrating her anniversary, well, next year technically. She's always had an intrinsic environmental ethic. She's always recycled. I basically recruited her for Green Business Barbados because she was doing everything already. But then when we started to work together, she still had fundamental issues like recycling being picked up. She had high operation costs because she's a raw food chef and dehydrators use a lot of electricity. So she's had to stop selling some of her products for that reason. But we had some, I guess, wins recently. And we had a reggae artist try her raw food. We have a big reggae festival in Barbados. And so I'm working with her to kind of engage my demographic, the 1835 demographic. And I have a feature article on her because I possibly cannot tell her whole story. And I don't even know her whole story yet. I've only been working with her for 3 years. But you can read more on our blog or our website. And then Carlisa Enterprise. She's low operational costs because she doesn't even have a motorized pasta machine yet. But we are looking into energy efficient equipment, so this is a call for anyone who has that type of energy efficient equipment. And it would be an investment. We're looking at business relationships. She still mills her flour off-site, and so she does have to look into that. So you can look at her feature article. One of the main, I'm sorry about that packaging. I'm sorry, that's packaging actually. She is looking at getting more sustainable packaging because it is in plastic right now, but cardboard boxes like the size of mac and cheese are like $5 US, and that's crazy for a wholesale any kind of situation. So really quickly, the businesses that are here, I cannot share them all, but I'm going to post part of this presentation onto our Facebook page so you can see more. But we have a variety of artists that have made like a bustier from coconut husk, artists that have made textile pieces from dyes that use minimal amount of water. We have gluten-free flowers, we have 2 holistic practitioners, And then on the other end, as I said, we're a group of consultants, and one of our consultants runs, I guess, an engagement on chattel houses. Chattel houses are actually the original sustainable house for Barbados. They're called different things throughout the region, and I'm gonna have an infographic up on that if you want to learn more. And then if we're probably not gonna have time, but I'll be showing the video of some of our other consultants at our booth. And I have a team in DC here, Gabrielle Downer. She works at the Capitol, but she's also an archivist, and she helps us with that side of the collective. And yeah, so you can learn more about us if you come to the booth. I'm winding down the time. So really quickly, what could it look like? We want to form business-to-business relationships. Particularly, there's a marketplace being launched for the Green Festival, so that will be the first place that happens. But one-on-one, if you see any of the needs I'm putting forward that you can meet, please let me know. We're hoping to attract businesses that are looking for alternative ways to, I guess, be responsible about their business if they are exporting. If they are exporting their plastic to the Caribbean, maybe they could also help us with waste management, maybe. So one of the key things that we need are people who buy recyclables. Because one of our challenges with recycling is that the companies, they still chip up the recycled plastic and ship it out. So the minute the price of that goes down, they're gonna slow down their operations. And Barbadians don't even know where their plastic ends up, whether it's made into a cup or anything. So if we could find someone who actually buys recyclables, then we could kind of close that loop so we understand the value of recycling, and maybe we could even use that material in some of our products locally. We're looking for smaller scale technology to deal with waste rather than large scale plasma gasification. We're looking for partners primarily on post-consumer waste. So remember I mentioned the $5 cardboard box. If we had someone that would actually be making cardboard and understand the value of what we're doing, hoping to get a better price point on that. So we find that in the Caribbean, the cooperative, people look at cooperatives, yes, as having collective buying power, but this is especially important for us because we find that we wouldn't have, the idea of having collective political power is a little more complicated. Just really quickly, in the States, you have 3 levels of government. In Barbados and the Caribbean, you usually have 1. So you have a member of parliament, and if you don't get his time, that's it, really, for an issue. So rather than trying to change the politics, we want to basically show, for instance, we have issues with tax incentives for green products. We're supposed to be a green economy, but I have spent 2 years trying to make the case for that, and the only way I think now politically and economically we could make that case is if I get more businesses bringing in sustainable products or exporting products, so actually collecting the data to make that case. And that is so important because our imported products right now are 2 to 5 times the amount, and then when you add on duties, it's kind of crazy cost of living. And essentially, with these groups of businesses, we want to create an ecosystem that appears like a large business that can have that kind of power. So as I said, packaging, biodegradable containers. A company just started bringing in bagasse, sugarcane waste containers, and that's a major issue when we have styrofoam and so on, but it's all the way from UK. So if you could find someone that was closer, that would be great. It would bring down the price point. Or even if you have machines that could help us with processing our waste. And small scale technology, I'll just summarize it there. And really quickly, what I think you can do is, as an attendee, come to see these sceneries I put up, meet these businesses in their reality, come to see us in the booth. Please divest from the all-inclusive tourism model. And if you are going to adopt the all-inclusive vacation package, make sure you ask these all-inclusive chains like where they're getting their food from, and please do not be satisfied by the greenwashing of maybe they have a picture of a farmer on there. That doesn't really mean that they're actually buying it locally or sustainably. So we want to encourage responsible tourism, maybe green business exchange trips, Because, as I said, we do value, unfortunately right now, people do value US and UK and Canada perspectives more than Caribbean. And actually saying that, I hope it gets people upset and they want to change that reality. And I'm not saying everybody has that perception. There are many people in the Caribbean that value our own goods, but it's not the dominant feature. So that's why people who visit and people in America really have opportunity to kind of reshift our green economy for us. We will guide, but if you say that the way a hotel is dumping waste, out into the sea is an issue. If you go and you swim to sea turtles and you see plastic bags in the water, you bring it up, it has a big impact right now on our islands. And our government will move very quickly to solve those issues. That's just our reality. And I want things to change. So that brings us back to why it's all global, how we're all going to be exchanging information as we travel and so on. So if we are on both the same page of wanting a globally sustainable world, we do need people who will stand up for these types of changes, business to business. So I don't have time to show the video, but I will show it now over in booth at 274. I want to thank you all for listening, even if you came in on the end. You can check out the Better Caribbean Facebook page or bettercaribbean.com, and I'll be posting more of the information that I shared here, and you can always reach out to me as well if you had any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, and everybody give Miss Ariana Marshall a hand. And also visit her. Her booth is right here. We've been neighbors all day. School was a pleasure. All right. And for those who are now joining us, welcome. This is the 12th annual Green Festival. And I want to thank you for being here. And we have over 700 volunteers. 700. It's a lot of people. And we would also like to thank our sponsors and exhibitors, because without them, we couldn't be here. All right? And last but definitely not least, we have the lovely Bonnie. And she just told me how to say her last name. Kazatsa. All right? And she is going to talk about the amazing health benefits of infrared. All right, so welcome Miss Bonnie with all her great energy.